One afternoon, a boy named Alk was quietly fishing by the lake when a strange old man appeared and asked if he wanted to learn magic. The offer was too good to refuse, so Alk began spending his days training under the man Eldies, a skilled mage. One day, Eldies decided to teach Alk fire magic, the kind used to protect others. It was tricky at first, but Alk eventually got it right. He was a little disappointed it took him all day, but Eldies reminded him that most people need a month to learn what he did in one day, so he should stop pouting and be proud. When Alk begged for another lesson, Eldies said that was enough magic for one day and suggested they relax with some fishing. Alk reluctantly agreed, though he clearly wanted to keep learning. Eldies chuckled and said Alk had amazing talent. Even without a teacher, he'd probably become a great mage. That got Alk thinking. "Then why did you even bother teaching me?" he asked. Eldies smiled, but before he could answer, his fishing line suddenly jerked, and the conversation was over. The next day, training continued. Eldies handed Alk a magic textbook, but to Alk, it was more confusing than math with letters. Over the next few months, though, he slowly began to understand. Then, one spring morning, Eldies came with bad news. He had to leave the capital and could no longer train Alk. Before leaving, Eldies gave Alk one final warning. "You have the talent to become a court magician, but if anyone ever offers you that job, turn it down. It's not worth the trouble." Alk was confused and asked why Eldies had chosen to teach him in the first place. Eldies revealed that Alk's mother once did him a great kindness, and training her son was his way of repaying that debt. Years later, Alk became a student at the Royal Academy. One day, he found an old yearbook and discovered that Eldies had once been the top student and later a court magician, before being banished from the kingdom. That explained everything, except Alk immediately decided he'd become a court magician too, to clear Eldies' name, completely forgetting the old man's warning. Fast forward, guess what? Alk got banished too. He had joined the hero party, led by the Crown Prince Regulus, along with Lenny, a mage, and X, a knight. But during a mission, Regulus suddenly fired him. Alk was stunned. Why? Regulus explained that everyone else had flashy roles. He swung his sword, Lenny blasted magic, and X blocked attacks. Alk, however, only cast boring support spells like defense and buffing. To the prince, that made him useless. Alk tried to explain that support spells were vital, but Regulus, who hadn't had a smart thought in years, wasn't having it. He told Alk to go home. Ironically, Alk had never even wanted to join the party. The king had ordered him to, and refusing a royal command wasn't an option. Now, the prince who banned commoners from carrying weapons just so no one could outshine him was calling Alk weak. Even after being kicked out, Alk still wanted to help. He wrote down monster patterns and battle strategies for the team and went to deliver them at the castle, only to find out he'd been stripped of his court title. Then Lenny showed up, just to rub salt in the wound. She'd always been jealous of Alk since their academy days. He'd been praised while she wasn't. When Alk politely asked her to deliver a letter to the king, she tore it to pieces right in front of him and told the guards to throw him out. 4 years after becoming a court magician, Alk had tried to fix the corrupt system, but nothing changed. Then one day, he heard a familiar voice, Yora, his old friend. She hugged him tightly, shocked to see him again. Sitting by the canal, Alk told her everything. Furious at how the kingdom treated commoners, Yora ranted until Alk calmed her down. Then she smiled, saying she was glad he'd been kicked out. It meant he was free to join her party. Moved by her faith in him, Alk agreed. The next morning, they set off for Fisizal City. Alk thought about Eldies' old warning, wondering if things would have been easier if he'd listened. Back in the capital, Prince Regulus bragged about finally getting rid of the commoner mage. Lenny cheered, saying they could now replace him with a noble and clear dungeons faster. Spoiler, they're going to regret it. Days later, Alk and Yora arrived in Fisizal, a city where nobles and commoners actually got along. Yora called it a paradise for adventurers and led Alk to the guild to register. That's when trouble started. The receptionist told Alk he needed a special license to explore dungeons past level 30, and that required 2 years of registration. Worse, Yora's teammate Kesha had already angered the guild earlier, so no one wanted to help them. Yora was frustrated their team had already reached floor 52, but now they'd have to wait 2 years. Still, she shrugged it off. No point complaining. We'll just explore where we can. Later that day, they entered a dungeon only to face a swarm of red hornets the size of footballs. Yora boosted Alk with magic, but there were too many. Alk realized something had disturbed their nest. Yora charged ahead, ignoring him. "You've gotten soft, Alk. Remember who you were before you became a court mage?" That fired him up. Alk unleashed his full-strength fire blasts, then a massive thunderbolt, wiping the hornets out. But before they could breathe, the ground shook as a giant earthworm erupted and coiled around Yora. "Your defense magic still as strong as back in the academy?" Alk yelled. "Only if your attack magic's still insane," she shouted back. Trusting her shields, Alk summoned a fire tornado, engulfing both Yora and the monster. When the flames cleared, the worm was ash and Yora stood unharmed, grinning. "Your magic's still incredible," she laughed. "Can't wait to get the team back together, it'll be just like old times." Before graduation, Alk was part of a legendary student team made up of Ornis the warrior, Crazia the archer, Yora the support mage, and Alk himself the attack mage. On their final day at the academy, they shattered the dungeon record by clearing the 68th floor and secured top ranks. As they walked home, Alk suddenly dropped a bombshell: he wasn't joining their adventuring party. Instead, he planned to become a court magician. His friends were disappointed, especially Ornis, since together they could have formed the strongest adventuring team ever. But they respected his choice. Before parting ways, Yora made it clear she wouldn't give up on recruiting him in the future. Fast forward to the present. Yora officially welcomes Alk to her party. To celebrate, she treats him to a feast, and then promptly gets drunk after a single mug of beer. While she's slumped over, Alk gently uses magic to cover her with his jacket. Just then, a stranger appears behind him, mocking how considerate Alk is for an adventurer. Alk ignores him, but that only ticks the man off, and he smashes a bottle at Alk. Luckily, Alk blocks it with a magic shield. Before he can retaliate, the man calls him by name and slides a dungeon pass across the table, calling it an apology for testing him. Alk is confused until Yora groggily wakes up and blurts out that the man is actually the guildmaster. The guildmaster, Leviel Stans, invites Alk to a sparring match at the training center. Turns out, Leviel is a former S-rank adventurer, so Alk knows this won't be easy, but it's the perfect chance to sharpen his skills. As the fight begins, Alk fires off a thunderbolt, but Leviel dodges and counters with a water slash. Realizing long range won't cut it, Alk charges in. Leviel buffs himself with enhancement magic, turning into a blur of speed and power. Alk barely blocks his first punch with a shield and gets launched into a wall. But instead of giving up, Alk laughs. As a court mage, he was forced to only support and dodge. As an adventurer, he can finally go all out. He transforms his wand into a magic sword, slashes through Leviel's water attacks, and counters his dash with a thunderbolt. Leviel is impressed but isn't done yet. He activates an ancient artifact, massive gauntlets that can crater the floor with one punch. Alk knows one hit could end him, so he strikes back fast. Unfortunately, Leviel's artifact also heals him over time, meaning the longer the fight drags on, the worse it gets for Alk. Alk taunts him into attacking recklessly, leaving Leviel wide open for a clean slash. The fight intensifies, shields shatter, the ground cracks, and finally, with one last move, Alk lands a decisive blow. He collapses immediately after, completely spent. Leviel admits he may have gone a little overboard and declares Alk the winner. Ornis arrives just in time to see the aftermath and teases Leviel for using his ultimate weapon in a friendly match. Leviel just shrugs it was fun. He hands Alk the dungeon pass and promises full support as long as Alk doesn't sue him. As Alk rests on the couch, Yora and Ornis talk about his rough past. At the royal castle, commoners like Alk faced endless snobbery and unfair treatment. Surviving there as a court mage was a battle of its own. Suddenly, the receptionist rushes in with bad news, and Leviel leaves to handle it, strictly warning them not to touch his expensive alcohol. Naturally, Ornis immediately grabs the fanciest bottle he can find, just to mess with him later. Then he turns to Yora and says, "All right, spill it. I want the full story of Alk the court mage." And oh boy, she's got plenty to tell. Back when Alk worked at the royal castle, life was miserable. His job was to protect the prince, but here's the catch: he wasn't allowed to carry a sword or use any magic that might make him look stronger than the royal brat. On top of that, he had to carry the team's luggage and manage their gear. And to add insult to injury, after forcing Alk to only use support magic, the prince had the nerve to call him useless for doing exactly that. Ornes is baffled because Alk is an attack mage, not a healer. So Yora explains that Alk spent years learning support magic just to keep the prince happy, even though it wasn't his thing. Hearing everything Alk went through, Ornes is ready to march to the kingdom and punch that prince square in the face. But Alk stops him. He admits the past still stings, but he's not the kind of guy to waste energy on revenge. He'd rather spend his time adventuring with his friends. Besides, karma will deal with the prince eventually after all. There's no one left to clean up his royal mess anymore. That gives Ornes an idea. If they become the strongest adventurers in the world, the prince will regret ever kicking Alk out. One day, when the prince comes crawling back, Alk can reject him with the most satisfying no ever. Alk likes the sound of that. The two fist bump, swearing to rise to the top together. Meanwhile, in another room, a badly injured member of an S-rank party is being patched up. She reports to the guildmaster that their mission was a total disaster. The rest of her team is still trapped on the 64th floor of the dungeon. The guildmaster, Leviel, calls for an emergency rescue team, but the only people available on such short notice are the ones already at the guild. Everyone looks uneasy. They know how dangerous that floor is. While the meeting happens, Alk sits alone in Leviel's office, bruised and bandaged from his spar earlier. Krezia finds him and heals him with restoration magic. She reminds him he's not an outsider anymore, he belongs here. Years of keeping his head down at the castle made him quiet, but breaking that habit won't happen overnight. She gently pats his head, and for the first time in a while, Alk actually feels safe. A moment later, Ornes and Yora return, grinning like troublemakers. Ornes announces they've got their first big mission, the dungeon nicknamed Tank Killer. Why the name? Because inside, healing magic doesn't work, only potions can keep you alive. Krezia clearly hates this plan since healing is her specialty, but Ornes pressured her into it anyway. Alk worries he won't be much help, but Yora cuts him off with a grin. "Are you kidding? You're the backbone of this team. Without your magic, we can't even start." And just like that, Team Alk is heading into their first dangerous mission together. End of episode 2. The team's goal is simple: reach the rescue party trapped on floor 64. The problem: getting there the normal way would take forever, and they don't have that kind of time. Luckily, the guild master gave them a little cheat code, a dungeon core. This handy item lets them skip past all the previous boss fights up to the floor it was found on. Since Krista brought this one back from floor 64, it means smooth sailing, well, mostly. The floor boss is said to be an undead monster, so everyone's counting on Alk's attack magic to deal the final blow. That's why Ornes tells him to save his energy until the big fight. Alk's unsure about sitting out of most of the action, but Ornes insists it's better than him running out of magic mid-battle. They teleport to the 64th floor, and right away, a pack of skeletons welcomes them. Ornes, never one to waste time, charges forward and starts spearing bones left and right. Yora yells for him to slow down so she can cast defensive magic on him, but honestly, he's doing fine without it. Alk and Kra trail behind, chatting. Alk's surprised to learn Ornes owns a weapon like Levio's. Kra explains it's basically just a spear with sharpness and unbreaking enchantments. Nothing fancy, but perfect for a guy like Ornes. Things are getting dull since Ornes is single-handedly wrecking everything, so Alk offers to help. Ornes shuts him down, saying he wants to handle all the fodder himself. As they continue walking, Alk suddenly senses something creeping up on him. He spins around and fires a lightning bolt, boom, right on target. Turns out, it's a Grim Reaper, invisible until Alk struck it. Ornes cheers, proud that Alk's instincts are still razor sharp. But Alk quickly catches on Ornes' new invisible monsters were on this floor and didn't say a word. Ornes admits it. claiming he wanted Alk to figure it out himself for confidence building. Alk isn't exactly thrilled about being turned into a teaching experiment, and the others apologize for going along with it. Krazia even tells Alk to take his anger out on Ornis later. Alk agrees after the mission. They push deeper into the dungeon and stumble upon an even bigger skeleton horde. Ornis gets all hyped up, ready for a decent challenge, but Yora reminds him this is a rescue mission, not a tournament. Of course, he ignores her. Alk joins him, and Yora casts enhancement magic on both. While the two mow down enemies like it's nothing, they forget that Yora can't fight and she's instantly surrounded. Thankfully, Kraus swoops in to save her. Alk decides enough is enough. He tells everyone to get behind him and unleashes a massive thunderbolt that wipes the floor clean. Once the coast is clear, Ornis finally asks why Alk keeps spamming the same spell. Back in school, Alk used to mix it up with all sorts of cool magic. Alk explains that constantly cleaning up after reckless people read, a certain prince made him rely on lightning bolts. They're quick, simple, and effective. Suddenly, a terrifying roar echoes through the dungeon, the floor boss. Yora confirms it, and they rush ahead. With Yora's speed boosts, Ornis takes the lead, sprinting like a blur. When the others catch up, they find him casually sitting at a cliff's edge, watching a guy below being chased by the boss. The poor guy's name is Loki, the support mage of the rescue party, and apparently, everyone hates him. Ornis calls him annoying, and Loki yells that if he dies, he'll haunt Ornis forever. Ornis seems fine with that. Then Loki trips, and Alk freaks out, wanting to help, but the others tell him to relax, this is just Loki's fighting style. Sure enough, the boss steps on one of Loki's traps, and a huge fire pillar blasts it from below. Loki laughs like a maniac as more traps go off, but then runs out. Now he's out of tricks and seconds away from becoming Monster Chow. That's when the team jumps in. Ornis drags Loki to safety while the others distract the boss. The monster charges straight for Loki, furious at being tricked. Ornis can't outrun it, so he pulls off an epic move running under the monster and yeeting Loki across the battlefield to Krazia, who catches him. Yora tells Krazia to get Loki to high ground while she powers up Ornis with every buff spell she's got. Fully charged, Ornis charges head-on. He dodges a huge strike, leaps, and drives his spear right under the monster's eye, but it's not enough. The beast smacks him down hard. Yora rushes to his side and throws up a magic shield just in time to block the monster's stomp. But the shield's already cracking, it won't last long. Yora shouts for Alk to hurry up with his spell before her shield gives out. Up on the clifftop, Loki finally stops panicking long enough to notice what's happening below, and what he sees blows his mind. Alk, the legendary genius mage he's heard so many rumors about, is actually here in the flesh. Loki leans forward, watching closely as Alk calmly starts forming magic circles, lots of them. 3 to 5 at once would already make someone a prodigy. But Alk, he's casually spinning out 20 like it's nothing. Loki's jaw drops. Sensing danger, the undead monster charges toward Alk to interrupt his spell, but Ornis steps in, blocking its path. The moment Alk finishes casting, the air explodes with power as he rains down a storm of lightning bolts one after another before unleashing a massive, concentrated blast meant to finish the beast once and for all. Unfortunately, the monster leaps aside at the last second, dodging the hit. Alk quickly warns everyone to brace for a counterattack. Ornis calls to Kreia for cover fire, and she immediately fires off an arrow rain, pelting the monster and slowing it down. That gives Yora enough time to trap it with binding magic, leaving it wide open. Ornis seizes the moment and hurls his spear straight through the monster's skull bullseye. But somehow, the undead refuses to stay dead. It roars and launches one last desperate attack right at Alk. Bad move. Alk smirks and activates his ultimate trump card, Reflection Magic. It's a spell so advanced that only he's ever pulled it off. The monster's own blast bounces back with full force, exploding in a blinding flash. When the dust settles, Ornis jumps in to finish the job, splitting the creature's head clean in two. Once the smoke clears, Loki finally climbs down and congratulates everyone. He's especially impressed by Alk, saying he's heard all about his legendary feats like the time he took down a Hydra with a single spell. Alk humbly thanks him but admits he's no longer a court mage. Loki is stunned. "What kind of idiots fire you?" he blurts out. Then Loki drops a bombshell. There's another floor boss still roaming around. Everyone freezes. Loki explains that when his team got here, 2 bosses appeared at once. He volunteered to lure away the dumb ones so the others could focus on the tougher opponent, a black armored knight that's probably a possessed suit of armor. Physical attacks won't do much, so their best hope is Alk's magic. Loki tosses Alk a strange cross-shaped artifact called Shwar, saying he can keep it, but there's a catch. Kreia instantly gets suspicious because, let's be real, Loki never gives out freebies. Loki assures them it's nothing big. He just wants Alk to fight the second boss without using any magic. Everyone stares at him like he's lost his mind. "You expect a mage to fight without magic?" Ornis asks. Loki just grins and says, "Exactly. The Death Knight will be expecting magic. So, we'll hit it with the one thing it won't see coming." Subscribe, because things are about to get way crazier in the next one. Anyway, remember that spoiled prince who fired Alk? Yeah, this is him now running for his life through a dungeon with his team, being chased by 2 oversized caterpillars. The prince can't believe it. Monsters like these used to be no big deal. Panicking, he yells at Lainey to use magic, but her spells suddenly won't work. He calls her useless and decides to handle it himself, except when he swings his sword. It just bounces off. That's when reality hits. He's washed. Lainey and the knight grab him off the floor and start sprinting for the exit while the prince's ego crumbles mid-run. He tries to figure out why he's suddenly so weak, then remembers this all started after he kicked Alk out of the team. But instead of realizing Alk was actually the backbone of their success, he convinces himself Alk must have cursed him. So, he storms off to the royal magician, Vojan Forners, demanding a curse check. After a quick scan, Vojan says there's no curse, just an anti-magic field on the dungeon's 30th floor. The prince scoffs, saying support magic is for cowards like Alk anyway. Vojan, trying not to facepalm, notes that Alk actually reached the 68th floor back in his academy days. The prince laughs that off too, calling it a silly rumor spread by commoners. Vojan doesn't even argue there's no cure for stupidity. Just then, a guard informs the prince that the king wants to see him. The prince smirks, thinking his father will back him up. Spoiler, he doesn't. The king instead tells a story about a noble named Eldas, a genius magician who once warned him that mistreating commoners would bring ruin to the kingdom. The king ignored him back then, but now he's rethinking things. He admits he sent the prince into the dungeon to test whether nobles were truly superior, and based on how that went, he's changing policy. From now on, talent matters more than bloodline. The prince is horrified, calling it a disgrace to their family. The king admits it's his own fault for raising him that way, but insists things must change. Then, a guard brings what's left of a book Alk wrote, a detailed guide for clearing the dungeon's 30th floor. Turns out Lainey tore it up before the prince could see it. Realizing Alk might have actually been brilliant, the prince excuses himself, spiraling into denial. Meanwhile, Alk's preparing for battle. Loki warns him not to use magic against the boss, not because it's weak, but because he wants the monster to think Alk's just a melee fighter. The plan is to catch it off guard. Alk's skeptical but agrees. Loki then prepares teleportation magic with Kraz help, a spell so top secret it could get them arrested. The others panic, but there's no time to argue. As Loki draws the circle, Alk asks Yora if Loki can really be trusted. She admits Loki's kind of a jerk, but when it counts, he always delivers, like that one time he led a high-level raid with 0 casualties. Hearing that, Alk decides to trust him. Moments later, they all step into the circle and vanish, reappearing right in front of the boss fight. The rest of Loki's team is exhausted, barely holding off a hulking Dark Knight. Ornis jumps in to give them cover while Alk sneaks around for a back attack, but the knight reacts instantly, leaping into the air. Loki helps pull the others to safety while Ornis goes head-to-head with the monster. Its armor is insanely tough, and weirdly, there's nobody inside. Still, Ornis isn't phased. When the knight jumps, Ornis pins its cape down, giving Alk the opening to slice off its head. The helmet clatters to the ground, but of course, it's not over. The body suddenly twitches back to life, tendrils writhing out of its neck. Turns out, it's a headless undead knight and the monster they killed earlier. Just its horse. Alk freezes for a split second, and in that moment, the Dullahan lunges from above, ready to strike. Alk raises his sword just in time to block the knight's strike barely. The monster is faster and stronger than before, which means it had been holding back earlier. Great. That means things are only going to get worse from here. Luckily, Alk's not alone. While he's holding the line, Yora keeps spamming buffs on Ornest, who charges forward and lands a heavy blow, giving Alk an opening to push the knight back. Even so, the knight's armor is insanely tough. If Alk's sword wasn't an artifact, it would have snapped ages ago. And since the knight's undead, it just keeps regenerating no matter how many times they hit it. Then, things go from bad to worse. The knight picks up its own head, slaps it back on, and lets out a scream so loud it rattles everyone's brains. It kicks Alk across the room like a ragdoll, but Yora quickly casts a barrier, saving him from being splattered on the wall. Alk thanks her, saying he didn't expect the knight to be so good at martial arts. Without her barrier, he'd be toast. He then yells at Loki, asking how much longer he's supposed to stall this thing. Loki, still working on his big spell, casually replies, 5 more minutes. Easy for him to say. Alk almost died 5 seconds ago, and only has 3 potions left. Ornest is barely hanging on, so he shouts at Alk to get it together, and the two keep the knight busy while Loki finishes up. Finally, Loki completes his setup. A massive magic circle lights up the floor as he starts laughing like a maniac. The knight panics and charges straight at him, slashing Loki across the chest, except, surprise, that Loki was just an illusion. The real Loki watches from above as ice forms under the knight's feet. Then Ornest steps on a teleport trap Loki and cross-set earlier, warping behind the knight to knock it forward. Marbell leaps down from an archway for a finishing blow. The knight dodges, but that's exactly what Loki planned. Another ice trap triggers, slowing it down. The knight realizes Loki's behind all of this and climbs the tower to take him out. Loki draws a magic blade, but Yora's worried he's not built for close combat. Thankfully, he'd asked her for a 7-fold strength buff beforehand, though his body's barely handling the strain. He still manages to keep the knight busy long enough for Yora to cast a binding spell. But before they can breathe, the knight breaks free and smashes Loki off the tower. As he plummets, Loki doesn't panic. He just grins and shouts to Alk. The stage is set. Finish it. Alk begins casting massive magic circles that light up the night sky. Loki can't help but be impressed. Alk's using even more magic than he did against the last boss. But after all that fighting, Alk's body is close to breaking down. Every muscle strains under the pressure of maintaining such a complex spell. Still, he refuses to give in. Gritting his teeth, he gets back on his feet and unleashes his Thunderbolt acceleration spell. The blast tears through the battlefield, but the knight still isn't down. It's already starting to break free from Yora's binding magic. She struggles to hold it and yells for Alk to finish it off. Easier said than done. Alk's body is on the verge of collapsing. This is the second time today he's used this much power, and the mana drain would have put most mages in the hospital. But Alk isn't most mages. With sheer willpower, he pushes through the pain and completes his ultimate spell. A massive lightning dragon bursts forth, roaring across the sky before vaporizing the knight in a single strike. The battle is finally over. Alk drops to the ground, completely exhausted, and jokes that having reliable teammates really makes a difference. Yora laughs, saying it's the other way around. They were the ones relying on him. Ornest grins and reminds Alk of their earlier bet. Whoever passed out first had to do a dare. Technically, Alk lost, but Ornest decides to go easy on him from now on. Alk's dare is to stop keeping secrets and actually talk to his friends when something's bothering him. After the battle, Riol and Marbell come over to thank him. When Marbell invites Alk to raid dungeons with her, Yora quickly cuts in, declaring that he's their party's magician. To show gratitude, Rue offers to write a recommendation for Alk, something he needs to reach his rank, along with the guild master's approval. With the mission complete, Alk collects the knight's magic stone and returns to the guild. The receptionist congratulates him, saying he's been the talk of the place lately. Just as he's about to leave, Lael stops him. Someone from the kingdom of Galana is waiting. It's Vogan, one of the few nobles Alk actually liked. But instead of greetings, Vogan jumps straight to business. Did Alk deliberately let Prince Regulus get himself hurt by not warning him about dungeon dangers? Alk replies calmly that even if he had warned him, Regulus wouldn't have listened anyway. Vogan can't argue with that. Apparently, after Alk left, Regulus tried to solo the 30th dungeon floor and nearly got himself killed. Now he's in the underground training arena, demanding to see Alk. With a sigh, Alk agrees it's time to settle this once and for all. As they head down, Vogan admits he never understood why nobles obsess over status. Alk just shrugs. He's technically a noble too, but he's never cared about titles. He just wants to live freely. In the arena, Regulus greets him by announcing that the king plans to reform the kingdom. He doesn't agree with it, but will tolerate it out of respect for his father. For a second, Alk thinks maybe he's matured until Regulus adds that he still can't stand being lectured by a commoner like Alk. Alk sighs and tells him straight, if he'd just listened before, he wouldn't be in this mess. But Regulus is too stubborn to see it. After 15 years of being told he's superior to everyone, he can't handle the truth. Desperate to prove himself, he pulls out his weapons and challenges Alk to a duel with Vogan as witness. Regulus charges forward, and Alk's eyes widen. He's using daggers instead of his usual longsword. The irony: years ago, Alk told him daggers would suit him better since his body wasn't strong enough for a longsword. Naturally, Regulus ignored him back then. Regulus may have finally taken Alk's old advice and switched to daggers, but just changing weapons doesn't make you a better fighter overnight. Alk easily sidesteps one of his attacks, sending Regulus face first into the ground. It's obvious to Alk that Vogan had a hand in setting this whole thing up, so he asks what he told the prince. Vogan admits he only said one thing: if you want to prove Alk wrong, beat him in a fair fight. So here they are, Regulus's choice, Regulus's challenge. To his credit, he didn't plan any dirty tricks. He just wanted an honest one-on-one. His daggers are enchanted artifacts, so they pack a decent punch. When he clashes with Alk, he even manages to break through his shield, but that's as far as he gets. Regulus had trained non-stop with those daggers for this very fight. In doing so, he realized something humiliating: the only reason he'd ever made it so far in the dungeon was because of Alk's support magic. After Alk was fired, he kept challenging the 30th floor again and again, getting wrecked every single time. Eventually, he read the reports Alk had written, and every single thing in them turned out to be true. That stung more than any wound. For the first time, Regulus saw just how talented Alk really was, and it made him hate how he'd treated him. So now, Regulus demands Alk use his own artifact and fight seriously. Alk asks if he's sure he wants to do this, knowing full well the power gap between them. Regulus doesn't back down. Before they fight, though, Alk asks one question: is it true that the king plans to reform the royal court? Regulus nods, explaining that the king sent them into the dungeon to test the strength of commoners, meaning all of it was part of a bigger plan. Hearing that makes Alk genuinely happy. It means his 4 years as a court magician weren't wasted after all. With that, Alk draws his artifact and warns Regulus to brace himself. Regulus tries to stand tall, but he's clearly terrified. He knows what's coming. Alk charges, but at the last second, he diverts his strike and slams it into the ground instead. Regulus, confused and angry, demands to know why Alk spared him. He admits he spent his whole life believing nobles were superior, and if that isn't true, he doesn't even know who he is anymore. He came here ready to die, thinking it'd be the only way to save his pride. But instead, Alk just looks at him with pity, and that breaks him even more. Alk can't help but laugh at how ridiculous the situation's become. He came expecting a dramatic duel, but now Regulus is basically asking him for life advice. The absurdity of it all makes Alk realize there's no point being angry anymore. Seeing that, Regulus finally apologizes sincerely. Alk's surprised. He never thought Regulus had it in him. He understands that Regulus was just raised wrong, and while that doesn't excuse his behavior, the fact that he's willing to change is enough. Alk offers him a hand. Regulus hesitates, almost grabs it, then quickly pulls back, still clinging to what's left of his pride. Instead, he pulls out Alk's old court magician cloak and apologizes for taking it from him. He offers it back, along with a letter from the king and open invitation to return to the royal court. Alk asks if that's an order, but Vogan clarifies it's just a request. He can refuse if he wants. Alk smiles and says he doesn't need either. He's happy where he is with his friends, his party, and his freedom. Regulus accepts that, but insists Alk at least take the cloak it rightfully belongs to him. Then he turns to Vogan and says it's time to go. As they leave, there's a faint smile on Regulus's face. Both of them found closure that day, the noble who finally learned humility, and the mage who finally let go of his past. The next morning, Alk asks Yora, Crazia, and Ornes to tour Fissel. Ornes and Crazia bail to give Yora alone time. Yora almost ruins it by suggesting they reschedule, but Alk happily stays with her, making her secretly thrilled. As they explore the merchant district, Yora warns Alk about scams while nearly buying a shady fight for days pill herself. Alk stops her. She admits she's easily tricked. She shares Ornes once bought a Zorro cosplay and Crazia a giant teddy bear, so Alk decides to handle shopping. At a cafe, Alk asks why Ornes and Crazia dislike Loki. Yora explains a raid incident where Loki snapped after Ornes' spear hit him repeatedly. Crazia simply dislikes his vibe. Later, Yora sees a rare elven magic boost ribbon for 50,000 gil and gets depressed. Alk buys it, saying her magic is crucial. At sunset, on the clock tower, Yora asks if Alk truly wants to stay. He confirms he's abandoned old plans to help them grow stronger. She expects a confession when he says he has something to tell her, but it's just a lost bet. The next morning, Ornes drags Alk to spar. Their fight escalates, Yora interrupts, and Alk's sword breaks. Ornes calls him a monster for keeping up despite being a mage and asks for Alk's artifact. But Yora stops him. Loki appears offering S-rank coaching. They ignore him until he shows his S-rank card and claims he recommended their promotion. He refuses to hand over IDs unless Ornes apologizes. Before a fight, Krista and Reel arrive, confirming they recommended the promotion. The guild master approves it and gives them S-rank cards. Krista reminds Alk he still owes her. To celebrate, Loki treats everyone at a tavern. Yora passes out drunk not just from happiness, but because Alk refused the king's offer to return to Galana and stayed with them. Suddenly, Misha arrives. The guild needs a healer. The infirmary is filled with victims of the Shadow Guild. Olivia, Nameless's top swordswoman, is severely injured. By morning, Crazia finishes healing but faints. Alk meets Leog from Nameless, who invites him to raid the 72nd floor and offers the dungeon core. Olivia trains despite injuries, snapping at Crazia until she's comforted like a mother figure. She secretly slips something into Crazia's tea. Alk tells Yora and Ornes about Leog's offer. Yora thinks it's fine, Ornes warns it's suspicious. Misha bursts in. Crazia was drugged, and Olivia vanished into the labyrinth for revenge. Crazia warns the traitor Olivia mentioned is extremely strong. If she goes alone, she'll die. The party follows her. At the dungeon, Marbell appears, wanting to help. Lorard asked her to join as temporary S-rank swordswoman, but she mainly wants to see Alk's magic. Yora jealously blocks her. Marbell mentions she befriended Olivia after repeatedly following her. Before entering, Ornes gives Alk a strange wristband. Inside, Crazia sets a teleportation circle. Ornes gets drop-kicked into a trap. Alk tries to save him and also teleports. Alk appears in a monster mob and wipes them out with Thunderbolt, while Crazia snipes monsters using their paired Mobius ring. Yora and Ornes, linked by another Mobius pair, are chased by a stampede. Yora boosts Ornes, who blitzes through and kills the leader. Deeper, they find the floor boss dead from a perfect cut. Ornes recognizes the culprit, Melidial, the Blade Master. The Shadow Guild leader congratulates Meli, who crushed S-rank Olivia. He says he only works with them to pursue strength. Alk and Crazia locate injured Olivia hiding. She demands healing to continue not after the Shadow Guild, but her former teacher, the man who let her mother die. Before they can stop her, Olivia activates a teleport trap, and all three drop into a monster den. Alk charges in to thin the monster swarm, but there are way too many. Crazia heals Olivia so she can fight, and explains she can make a teleport circle, but it'll take time. Alk and Olivia stall the monsters. Olivia jumps in, slicing through monsters like she's cutting vegetables. Alk fights well, but can't reach their weak points and gets pushed back. Olivia bluntly tells him an S-rank swordsman shouldn't be struggling. Crazia finishes the teleport circle, and it instantly collapses. This whole area is inside an anti-magic field. To escape, they need to destroy the Magic Eater. More monsters surround them. Olivia asks Alk if he can do better. He tries, and his clean power slash finally impresses her a bit, though she still tells him to focus on speed. Crazia spots the Magic Eater at the back, but the path is blocked. Olivia sprints straight into the horde. Alk pulls the monsters toward himself to buy her time and even baits a vulture monster into killing a cyclops. Olivia reaches the Magic Eater, a skeleton wearing a strange belt. She destroys the belt, shutting down the anti-magic field. Magic returns, and Alk wipes out the entire mob with a 5-fold thunderbolt. They regroup and teleport out. Outside, Olivia asks why Alk never told her he was a mage. She feels awkward for lecturing him, but he says her advice helped. Crazia warns Olivia not to push herself. Healing magic isn't perfect. Olivia finally shares her past. Her adventurer mother died. Melly took her in and raised her like a father, until he suddenly cut her down during a raid and confessed he killed her mother. She survived and lived only for revenge. Alk relates to her loneliness and reminds her Lorg and Marbell care about her too. Olivia didn't want them involved because Melly's swordsmanship is terrifying. Alk and Crazia decide they'll help her get revenge. Meanwhile, Ornis and Yora are lost because Ornis keeps triggering teleport traps. They meet Shadow Guild members. One is literally eating dungeon cores. Ornis wipes them out, but the core-stuffed leader breaks the floor, grabs Yora, and disappears. Alk's group returns and finds a massive hole. Olivia climbs down and finds Yora's hat. Something bad happened. Below, the Shadow Guild hands Yora to their boss, Gloria. He says not to kill her. Melly appears and tells them to hurry. They sense someone coming. Ornis drops in and instantly kills a guild member. Gloria fights with a red sword, while the core-buffed leader survives, steals the Morbius bracelet from Ornis, grabs Yora, and escapes with Melly. Gloria stays behind to stall Ornis. Terrible idea. Ornis shatters his sword and stabs him through the chest. Gloria collapses, then stands right back up, healing with blood magic. He says he's done holding back. Ornist is shocked that Gloria healed himself so fast, but he isn't worried. He thinks he just has to keep hitting him until the healing stops. But when Ornist actually stabs Gloria through the chest, Gloria laughs, because Ornist just made the dumbest move possible. Gloria yanks the spear out and explains that his heretic blood magic not only lets him regenerate, it actually makes him stronger the more he's hurt. He proves it immediately. Now way stronger than before, Gloria slashes Ornist, summons a blood whip out of nowhere, grabs Ornist by the leg, swings him into the air, and smashes him into the ground. With Ornist barely able to move, Gloria starts laughing like a maniac. It's been ages since he got to bully someone this strong. He's ready to end Ornist for good. But Ornist refuses to stay down. He summons his spear, but instead of catching it, he lets it fly past him toward Gloria. Gloria dodges. He expected a trick. What he didn't expect was Ornist sprinting in to just start throwing hands. Years ago, Ornist and Alk once had a duel where Ornist accidentally launched his spear into a wall and kept fighting with his fists. The headmistress made them fix the wall, but Alk secretly admired Ornist's genius strategy. Ornist pretended it was on purpose back then, but now he's actually doing it for real. Ornist can't use attack magic like Alk, support spells like Yora, or healing like Kreia, but in close combat, almost nobody is better. And if Gloria gets stronger every time he bleeds, then Ornist will just beat him faster than he can regen. But Gloria suddenly bursts out laughing again. Ornist really thinks pure muscle can beat magic. To prove how wrong he is, Gloria prepares to summon a monster called Ansys. Meanwhile, at the guild, Levi tries to discuss important matters with Lorg, who's too busy inhaling sweets to listen. Levi asks if it's true he picked Alk as his raid partner. Lorg confirms it since Alk's party was promoted to S rank. It's allowed. He also wants to meet the five-colored magician, someone rumored to use all elements. Levi isn't sure the stories are true, but he knows Yora and the team wouldn't lie about their achievements. Then Marmamel bursts in with bad news. Olivia ran into the dungeon alone for revenge. Levi panics, but she says Alk and his group already went after her. Lorg is relieved, but Levi isn't now. He has to worry about both Olivia and Alk's group. Worse, he had planned an ambush on the Shadow Guild, but that opportunity is completely ruined. Before leaving, Levi asks Marmamel what she thinks of Alk's magic. She says Alk only uses fire and lightning, but she thinks he's hiding his true strength. Levi agrees it feels like Alk's holding back on purpose. Down in the dungeon, Ornest is seconds from death, staring at a giant death beam he can't dodge. But at the last moment, Alk appears and reflects it back at Gloria. Ornest has never been so happy to see him. Kreia and Olivia arrive too, but Gloria survives the blast and stands back up. Olivia knows blood magic is dangerous, so she offers to help. But Ornest warns them. Someone kidnapped Mora, and Shadow Guild members were calling her by name as if they've been hunting her for a long time. Now they're dragging Yora toward the dungeon core for some unknown, definitely bad reason. Kreia begins healing Ornest and tells Alk to stay and fight Gloria while she and Olivia chase after Yora. Gloria refuses, firing more death beams, but Alk reflects them again and creates enough smoke for the girls to slip past. Olivia even tosses Ornest's spear back to him. Gloria is furious at everyone interfering, but suddenly collapses to his knees. He's finally running out of mana. At the same time, Levi, Lorg, and Marmamel rush into the dungeon. Levi explains this looks like the work of the demon cultists inside the Shadow Guild, the kind of maniacs who will sacrifice anything for power, especially those with seals on their bodies. Gloria realizes he's cornered, activates his sorcery seal, and his power skyrockets. He blitzes Ornest instantly, tearing into his shoulder before Alk can even process what happened. Alk fires back with lightning, but Gloria dodges everything with ease, so Alk stops aiming and just nukes the whole area. Gloria gets blasted and still stands, smiling. In this form, Gloria can constantly regenerate mana using his own blood, making Alk's spells basically useless. He mocks Alk's baby attacks, then unleashes a storm of slashes. Alk barely manages to shield, but Gloria shatters it effortlessly. Just as Gloria moves in for the kill, he notices something wrong. Ornest has vanished. Ornest jumps in for a surprise strike, but Gloria blocks it like swatting a fly. With his boosted strength, Gloria completely overwhelms the already injured Ornest, calling him a fake genius who only looks strong in a tiny pond. Ornest is beaten down, bloody, nearly done. Alk wants to intervene, but Gloria warns that if he moves, Ornest dies instantly. But while Gloria is busy talking, Ornest forces himself up again. Remembering his childhood, always losing to his talented but secretly dying brother, training obsessively to catch up, and being told he'd one day become the world's greatest spearman, Ornest ignites his spear with fire and pierces Gloria straight through the chest. Using that resolve, he hits Gloria with another flaming strike, blowing a second hole through him. Meanwhile, Kreia and Olivia rush toward the dungeon core to stop Melly, with Olivia bracing herself for a confrontation she's feared for a long time. At the same time, Melly and a Shadow Guild grunt reach the core chamber. The grunt sprints up the stairs, grabs the core, and admires it like a child with a shiny toy, while Melly watches him with pure disgust. And that's where episode 9 ends. Subscribe, episode 10 is going to explode.